Hello everybody, this is Dwayne again. I'm running a little late today because I've been thinking it was Wednesday all day and it's Thursday, so I'm getting to you a little late tonight. I apologize for that. But the good thing is that tonight is a lesson that's a little different than the first two lessons, because I know those first two lessons are hard, and you may have decided you didn't even like me for even mentioning some of those things, but I hope that you still like me and you're here again, so maybe that means you haven't canceled me out quite yet. So that's a good thing, because I know some of the things I said were probably hard to hear, and I know there's little voices in your head probably saying, hey, let's not listen to this video. For one thing, he ran too long. For another thing, he said this or said that, and it really got a little too close to home. But anyway, regardless, you're here, and that's a good thing. And because tonight is a lesson about hope, and I know the first two lessons are the hardest. I know some of those things I said are going to make you want to turn away. I know that already. Change is difficult. It always is. There's some sensitive subject matter, some things that you've been dealing with for years that are hard to even think about, much less let some guy that you don't even know, or maybe you know but you just didn't know that good, point some things out to you. But I just wanted you to know that I'm not saying anything to you that I haven't already said to myself. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm not trying to hurt you at all. I want to help you. And I know change is hard. But this lesson tonight is about hope, okay? You can always go back. There's the first two lessons. You can always go back to those, because there's going to be things that may take you years to accept or not deny certain things in your life. It may take you a while. It may take you weeks or even months or a year to even accept that there are some things that you just can't control in your life. You may keep on trying to control some things and keep failing every time, and then keep going down these same paths, because we're habitual creatures. The paths that we tread every day, those are the things that our brain are used to seeing, used to doing. And we've got like interweaved in these neural pathways in our brain, right? These little paths that lead us down these trails that are familiar to us. And it's hard to go down a different path. It is. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail in a little bit. That's part of the change, is changing some habits. And I've got a couple of analogies I'm going to talk about. But tonight, we're on the second principle. We've moved past the first principle. We're on principle 2 that says, earnestly believe that God exists, that I matter to Him, that you matter to Him, and that He has the power to help me recover. And then Matthew 5:4-12, happy are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. So step 2 says we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And don't tell me that you haven't, at least at one point in your life, thought you may have lost a little bit of your sanity, okay? And you may be in that place now, you're thinking, hey, I'm doing the same things over and over, and it just doesn't make sense, right? God can restore us to sanity. God is the rock. He's the solid ground where we need to be. He can help us get to where a better place for us. Philippians 2:13 says, for it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill His good purpose. Well, His good purpose is also our good purpose. We don't actually acknowledge that sometimes, but where God is at a much higher plateau than where we are. And I know the first two classes are the hardest. I thank God that you're here tonight. You haven't thrown me away. You haven't kicked me to the curb quite yet, okay? I promise you that those are the two hardest classes. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. You have to trust me on that. I know those are some painful things that you have to look at in your life, and you don't want to face them. And I know you don't want to listen to me. There's something saying you don't want to listen to this guy. But look, it gets better, okay? It gets better. I promise you. There's some dark places in our life. You know, last week we talked about shining that light on some of those dark places. Well, guess what? You know, the darkness don't want light shined on it. The darkness does not want light shined on the darkness, because what happens to the darkness when the light is shined on it? The darkness goes away. And look, that darkness is going to fight. It's going to fight you in a lot of different ways. It's going to fight you. You have to stay the course. You have to shine that light. It's going to be hard at first, I promise you. But I promise you, it's also going to get better if you hang in there. So we know that healing is hard. Healing is hard, okay? It's easier to ignore it. But the hurt just stays there if we ignore it. So we've got to acknowledge it. Change is hard. We're habitual creatures. You know, we don't like change. You know, we like to go down a certain path, and we like to stay on that path. But sometimes our paths are the wrong paths, because the paths hurt us, and they hurt those that we love. And we don't want those paths. Nobody in their heart really wants those paths. To be on the paths that's going to hurt us and to hurt those that we love. That's not fun. That's not good for us. It's not good for our families. It's not good for our friends. It's not good for society. It's not good for the community, for the country, for the world. You know, admitting that things need to be changed is hard, because it's kind of like you're admitting that you were possibly failing at something. And admitting that you were failing at something is hard, but you have to. You have to be able to better yourself, to be able to grow. You have to. So admitting that we are powerless to fix some things, admitting that we can't fix everything, that we're not God, that we don't know everything, that's okay. Smart people know that they don't know everything. And if you ignorance, I'm not saying you're stupid or anything, I'm just saying you may be ignorant if you think you can fix. I was there. Trust me, I was there. I was totally ignorant. I thought I knew everything. There was a time in my life where I thought I knew it all. There was a time in my life where I thought I was immortal, almost. I mean, here on this planet, I wasn't scared of anything. But look, we're mortal. We have a purpose, okay? And we can't fix it all. We need that higher power. We need God in our life to help us with some of these things that we can't fix. And we have to accept that we cannot fix the things, and we have to ask for His help. So, you know, the first lesson was to quit denying these issues in our lives. The second lesson was to admit that we were powerless in some of these situations. It's kind of like powerlessness, kind of like that horse story that some of you probably got upset with me about because you didn't know the process of training a horse. When I talked about putting the horse on the ground and laying on its neck, establishing dominance, you probably had no idea that was part of the process. But to that horse, he's laying there, he's got this guy that doesn't even weigh as much as he does, laying on his neck, and he can't get up. It's like, what is going on here? You know, have you ever felt like that yourself, that something is just laying on your neck, okay, and you felt powerless? Well, I got up and I let the horse up. So, you know, remember the other story I told you about the horse, that I came home and the horse had ran through a fence, an electric fence, and it got the fence tangled up around its legs, and luckily it didn't cut him or anything, but it was just wrapped around his legs, and he was laying on the ground there, probably been laying there all day. Imagine the stuff that was going through his head. I'm just laying here, I can't do anything, I don't even see what's holding me down. But there are things holding us down, and sometimes we are the ones that ran through the fence and are part of the problem for some things that are holding us down. Change isn't easy, but change is possible. Don't believe anybody that says that a person can't change, or his situation can't change, his life can't change, or relationships cannot change, or relationships cannot be restored. Don't believe any of that if you hear that or if those thoughts enter your mind, because that's just not true, okay? That's not true. Now, I'm gonna tell you this little story about like a hiking trail, okay? And this goes with networks, neural networks in your brains, okay? And I don't care what life you have, you know, or what situations. I do care, but what I'm saying is, whether it's hurts in your life or whether you're going down a bad path and you're doing something that's destroying your life or making your life incredibly harder, you know, that's one reason I never really, I socially drank sometimes, but I never, life's hard enough. I didn't want any extra things on me to make life harder, and I needed a clear head to be able to function in life. And so that's why I never got addicted to alcohol myself. And that's not that I didn't have other situations in my life seeking out, you know, stimulating behaviors, you know, that wasn't similar, but it was more of a natural route to get feelings and get the dopamine in my brain. But let me tell you, we are made of our habits, and time and habits is what makes us who we are. Okay, time and habits. Remember those two things. There's only so much time in a day, and there's habits that you have that form who you are. Okay. All right. Everybody, just about everybody out here, that's why I'm telling you this, has been hiking before down a trail at a park or somewhere. Just about everybody, I'm sure. Almost all of you have done that. And the trails are marked. They've already been cut out. You know, there were bushes and privet hedge and briars and everything there. Someone's already came through and cut those trails out. Matter of fact, not only is it clear, but there is a kind of ruts where everybody's been walking, right? And so it's real easy. Even deer take, you notice deer paths, rabbit trails, fox trails. There's all trails. It's harder to get off of that path, okay? But think about these trails as being bad habits. We get used to bad habits, and we have stomped down that trail so many times, the same trail, okay, that it has been burned into our brain to go down this trail. It's just easy to get on it because we know it. But let's just say this trail takes us to a not so good place. And we know because we see other people have succeeded and they have been on a better trail. We just don't know how to get there, right? Okay, because their path takes them to a different place. Let's just say there's a beautiful scenic outcropping that's just gorgeous and you've never seen it, okay? But this trail you're on won't take you there. So I'm telling you, the first time you get on this new trail, which there's not even really a trail there, you have to take your machete or an axe or something or a chainsaw, and you have to cut down some of the bushes. It takes work. It takes a little work at first, okay? And it's so easy just to get back on that other trail. Even when you start on the new trail that you're making, it's easy to jump back over on this other trail. But you don't want to do that. Keep on the new trail. Look, it's kind of like exercise, okay? You know, you're out of shape. Maybe you had too much to eat for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and maybe you had too much to eat for 10 Thanksgivings and Christmases, okay? So you decide you want to change your life and lose some weight and get healthy because you want to live longer than you previously thought you wanted to. So when you first start going to the gym, man, it's hard. You know, you're sweating and, man, you're exhausted and you're just breathing hard, and you're like, everything in your mind's just saying, I'm not going back there. I'm not going to do this. This is different. This is new. This is different. You're sweating and you sweaty clothes and your armpits, you know. You didn't put on enough deodorant, whatever. You know, it's just hard. But if you stay in there and you keep doing it, then you start shedding the pounds and you start feeling good, and then it starts feeling nice. And then you can do things you couldn't do before. It's easier. stay with it, and that you're going to listen and you're going to try and to pray to God as much as you can for that higher power, and trust Him. Trust Him that He can help you, okay? So, change isn't easy, but it's possible. It is possible. Don't believe that it isn't. So, you know, and I know, look, your brain right now, and you may have already shut me off, and you may not, you may have decided, hey, I'm going to give that guy a break for a few weeks, and maybe you come back to me or whatever. If you gave up on me, or gave up on yourself, and you came back to me, thank you. I'm sorry if I said something that hurt you. I didn't mean to. I really didn't. I was trying to help, and I want you to stay with me, okay? And I want you to hear what I'm saying, and there's some sensitive things that you're going to have to touch, and you're not going to want to touch them, but you got to touch them to be able to get by it, to get over it, okay? You have to. You can't just continually turn away your wounds. You've got to look at them. You've got to face them. You got to face them. You got to look at them. You got to shine the light on them. Look, this lesson is about hope. So now we're going to move beyond a couple of those things, and we are going to move into this lesson, hope. Okay? You know, remember King David. Remember all the stuff he'd done. He'd done some bad things. There was hope for David. He was a guy after God's own heart. Remember that? You know, and he knew he couldn't do it alone. Look at Psalms. Man, he's crying out to God. He knew he couldn't do it alone. He was a genius because of that. And look, there's a story about the prodigal son, you know, and this is a good story, and it's about God's love for us, you know. If you've never heard this story, it's basically about a father and two sons. Well, one of the sons stayed home with him, and he did everything around the place, the farm or whatever, and he never left the father, okay? But there was this one son, let's just say he had a little bit of a wild hair, and he wanted to experience some things. And so he goes out into the world, and he experiences a lot of things. He pretty much spends all of his money. He does whatever. You know, everything you can think of, this guy's done. He's just been everywhere. And he pretty much got himself to a point where he's like, what is the point? You know, my life's empty. I mean, what is the point? What is my purpose? These superficial relationships, who are these people? They don't even love me, but my Father, He loves me. And so he decided he's going to just go home and just work for his father, just for peanuts, basically. And he gets home, and his father, you know, when you first start thinking, well, this guy's going home, he's done all these things, he's kind of in a way betrayed his father. You know, you'd think that maybe he's ashamed, and he probably is a little ashamed, but he gets home, and his father is so happy that he throws a big party. I mean, a big party. Biggest party he's ever thrown, okay? And so, you know, this kid comes home, and his dad is so happy. He's happy because his son was lost. There was a chance his son was going to die. You know, he wasn't going to make it if he kept living that life. You know, his life was going to be shorter than it could be. Short. So he came home. Of course, the other brother was a little jealous, but father didn't really care about that. He's human like everybody, you know. The guy had stayed there, and you would think he would be happy that his brother was coming home too. But that just shows the weakness of human beings, you know. Humans go through a lot of emotions. But look, I know that parable doesn't really make sense to some of you, because some of you didn't even have a father in your life. For some of you, the father was distant for some reason, maybe because of divorce, or maybe he lived in a different state or a different country even, or maybe your father just wasn't there at all. So you're the prodigal son, right, or the prodigal daughter, and you're out there experiencing the world, and you realize, you know, it's not all that it's cracked up to be. And so you go home, but you go home to an empty house. You go inside and there's dust on everything, and the yard's grown up, and it doesn't look like it did when you were a little boy or a little girl. Things have changed. People got old. Maybe they died. You know. But that just makes God, the Father, so much more powerful a Father to you, because He's the God of wisdom. He knows everything. And if you start a relationship with Him, if you begin a relationship with Him and you communicate with Him every day and you read the Bible and you pray, then, He will teach you all kinds of things that your father in real life couldn't even teach you. He will teach you things. Anybody can teach you human things. You see your father, or you saw your father, and you saw how imperfect he was, right? He's human, okay? Sometimes you have to forgive him for some things. And sometimes that might be hard. And sometimes you have to forgive yourself for some things. Because maybe all of it wasn't 100% his fault. Or maybe there was a third party involved that was causing a conflict. Whatever the case, God accepts the fatherless. He wants the fatherless, the orphans, the fatherless children, the motherless children. God will take you just like that parable of the prodigal son, okay? He'll take you in under his wing. You just have to go home. You just have to go home. Look. We all drift. Even those that are Christians, we all drift at some point, or backslide, as some people like to say. But it's always good to go home. And when you get out there and you experience life a little bit, and you realize all these shallow things really are meaningless in so many ways, it's just really good to go home, okay? Now look, this is a two-part lesson now, so some of y'all didn't listen to the second lesson last time. I think I ran too long in the first lesson. But I'm going to tell y'all about a dream that I had. I've had, 5 or 6 dreams that were just, the special effects were so incredible that Hollywood, even modern Hollywood, could not even compete. I don't care if they had $1 billion budget. Those dreams are still instilled in my mind after all these years. And it's not that I didn't have other dreams that were just junk dreams or whatever, just boring or just real scattered. But some of my dreams have been so focused, and this dream in particular, I'm going to share it because I think it may help you, because it certainly does apply to the lesson. And it's about life, okay? But life is represented, in my case, in my dream, as me being on a train. And it was my train. And I was in the front of it, right? And I was on a track going through hilly countryside, sort of like the rolling hills out in California, if you've ever been there, if you've ever seen it, grassy hills, and you just see hills everywhere, and you go down these long straightaways. And I just started out, I didn't have any cars on my train, right? And I had this big, huge light that was shining bright, Whatever that light represents, it represented my life, is my guesstimate is what it represented. But as I was going, I would stop at these train stations and cars would be added onto my train. Sometimes I would ask for those cars. And other times people just didn't ask me permission. They just added cars onto my train. And this thing just went on and on and on. And then after a while, I would look out the rearview mirror and I couldn't even see the back of my train. The car was so long, okay? There's so many cars. It just went for miles and miles. So, I'm going here, and I noticed that my light is starting to get a little dimmer, right? And then all of a sudden, I hear somebody cheering for me out of the right side of my train. And I looked over there, and on these hilltops, there are like thousands of people, and they're all like clapping and he's saying, hey, you know, and how you doing, and this sort of thing. You know, it was really a happy experience, and it really made me feel good, right? Okay. Now I looked down that side of my train in the rearview mirror, and it was brand new paint, and it was just shiny and looked brand new. Everything looked perfect, you know. But then I get up a little further, right, and then all of a sudden I hear it's like people booing, like. And I'm like, what is this? And it was out of the left side of my train. So I looked out the left side of my train, and there were people booing. There were thousands of people that were just booing and frowning and pointing at me and just saying ugly things to me and everything. And it made me feel bad. And I looked down the side of that side, my left side of my train, and there was rust. There was no new paint, and it was graffiti everywhere. It was just ugliness, nasty. And then all of a sudden, my light got even dimmer. And all of a sudden, I just felt exhausted in my dream. I mean, I could feel in my dream, I felt exhausted. And I looked far up ahead, and I could see that there was a dark tunnel coming up. And my light was getting dimmer and dimmer. And there was something that crossed through my mind that said, you know, if my light goes out and I get to that dark place, I'm not going to survive it. If I go through that tunnel without a light, I'm not going to make it. And, you know, there's no way my train didn't have a reverse. There was no reverse. It was going forward, and there was no brakes or anything. It was only going forward. And I had to have that light to go through that dark tunnel. And something just told me that. And so all of a sudden I just felt exhausted. Have you ever just felt exhausted? I mean, I could feel it in my dream. I just felt tired. And so I got down on my knees in my dream, closed my eyes, and I prayed. I said, God, you know, please help me. I'm tired. Help me. I'm tired. And I was probably in my 20s, probably mid-20s, workaholic at the time. Maybe late 20s when I had this dream. And there were all kinds of cars in my train. It was way too much stuff back then. And I got down on my knees in my dream and I prayed. And without even opening my eyes, I felt a presence there. And I opened my eyes and I looked to my right. And there was a guy that looked, and he didn't even physically, verbally talk to me with his mouth. But he communicated with me like in my mind. And he said, you're going to have to get rid of those carts. You got to get rid of them. And I'm going to describe him for a second, okay? Because he didn't look like any of these pictures you ever saw of Jesus, okay? For one thing, he wasn't tall. He was not even as tall as I am. He had dark brown hair that was really loose curls, wavy, and instead of being real long, it was really kind of shoulder length or a little bit longer. His face, he was not white like me, and he wasn't black like African Americans. He was kind of bronze, like a Middle Eastern guy. And his shoulders were broad. He was muscular, like he'd been working, you know, kind of like a carpenter does. And he told me I got to cut him loose. I got to get rid of the car. So I got up, go to the back of the engine, you know, and reach down, and I'm trying to disconnect this thing, and I couldn't disconnect it. And he's waiting for me, okay? He's standing right beside me, watching me. And I can't lift it up. And you know, it took me years to understand this part. It took me years. I was actually probably only 5 years before I fully comprehended this next step, okay? I'm trying to disconnect that thing. Even though I prayed for him to help me and he told me what to do, I'm back there trying to do it myself. Powerless. Powerless. Remember that. That's my point. Powerless, but also hope, because that's the lesson tonight. So I'm like this, and I look up at him, and he's watching me, waiting for something. You know what he was waiting for? Help me. I had my hand on it. I said, you got to help me, please. Help me with this. And he reached down, he put his hand on top of mine, and we lifted that thing up together, the latch, and let go of all that stuff. It was all gone. as soon as all that stuff was gone, my light brightened up, and it's like I got a surge of energy. I was just full of life and energy, and it was amazing. You know, I wanted to share that dream with you, and I hope that it's a blessing to you, because I didn't really understand it for a long time. I didn't really understand why one side of my train was brand new looking and everybody was happy, and the other side was ugly and full of graffiti, and people were frowning at me. But we present ourselves in a certain way. Sometimes we present ourselves as being perfect, but look, nobody's perfect. We're all imperfect. Everybody has imperfections. And sometimes we get too much junk back there. We got to get rid of that stuff. You know, we got to walk away from it. And we can't do it without God's help. So I'm going to end right there, and then I'll finish the lesson up next week. And I hope you hang in there with me. I'm praying for you. And you pray for me, okay? And we're going to get through this together. And keep reading that prayer serenity. And keep praying to God, and get a relationship with Him. And please come back next week, because really the main part of the lesson is going to start next week, okay? So anyway, you have a good week, and we'll talk to you later.